Well, I'm just sitting in my room and I'm trying to have a coffee experience. And while I'm sitting here, I thought now would be a nice time in a way to attempt to take you through a story plot that just unfolds and thickens, and hopefully I can do it in a way that I'll like how it comes out. Even if I don't, hopefully I can portray the message in a way that others might then enjoy the story for what it is to the magnitude of what it is. So, with that in mind, let's go down a story time. So, with this in mind, let's try to think about going down a story where there's a woman where no one seems to realize exactly who she is. And in the end, she turns out to be somebody of the most utmost importance. One, because she realizes who she is at the right moment. She's able to take hold of everything for what it is, and everything is therefore passed as a state of judgment on a particular day. And on this particular day, many things will unfold. But I only see it going that way. So if it doesn't go that way, then something else is amiss. But let's not talk about that part of the story yet, because that's the ending. So, in the story, there's this woman, and she becomes pregnant with child. And being her second child of taking to term as long as she has, this isn't the first time she's been down this road. With her first child, they tried to say that at one point, there was no heartbeat, something was wrong, blah, blah, blah. It turned out nothing was wrong. She's just fine. I have her still today. Now, with my baby boy, they attempted to do the same thing. But at this point, it was pretty much told to me I didn't have a choice or a decision. This is what I had to do, or there were or else consequences, such as if I didn't go through with the procedure of them saying that my child was dead and he needed to come out of me, that I would be considered an unfit mother because I wouldn't abort my child, that I could still feel moving, that they tried to say did not have a heartbeat. Well, how could I feel him moving then? Anyhow, so the game riddle continued with that to where then, well, I had to, and I was being refused the ability to allow my body to naturally reject him if he was gone. The body kind of does its thing. You should let it, do its thing instead of being forced. There's a difference. So now you got to consider how being forced to have your child taken and waited to just have that moment to kill him before he was able to even be born was a way to seek out against him, but with the overall joke being that regardless of how he was sought after, that he was more special because of the life he was denied. And with these things, the story continues to unfold in a way that will just continuously lead you down a rabbit hole of a spiral. For his life had more value in his death for who he was and where he was supposed to be unfolded, because by being born into death and being caught up to God on his throne, therefore immediately, what an honor for that little child to be so special, to be the one to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. And with that rod of iron, he rules down in the end times. For he himself comes to reap the harvest of the earth and is in his throne in heaven, because that's exactly where he went. And now there's been a story that's been unfolded in a way that I'm not there to know all the exact details. I just know the bits of parts and pieces of information that came out because of the spirit box along that journey from then to now. Which now he's been officially buried. He would be over 3 years old, and he was buried on his 3rd birthday. Interesting, right? And where he was buried was at a place called the Tree of Life. And everything unfolded in a way that was biblical, more than what I could have realized until afterwards. Even right around the time of all of this, I was at a state campground on the ocean coast, and at this state campground, the name of it was actually called the State of Disappointment State Campground. The State of Disappointment. What a wonderful campground to be camping at during a mourning process that you also use to take the time to finally bury your child. And in the beginning, you were upset. Because in the beginning, I wanted so bad to have him buried with his father. And I thought that's, what should have been done at the time. But God had bigger plans and better plans than what I could have ever have imagined. I thought that was so wrong to be excluded, so much so that he couldn't have been buried with his physical earth father and instead go straight to heaven with God and be, God's child until the day I get there. And to have known who he is and how he is the male child and how I am the woman that was prepared for, that I was the woman that had to go through these things so everything could be judged and viewed and looked at, and I could see and experience and go through all these different things. And I've only been able to share so much. But along these paths and journeys that I've been down, it's been a biblical journey. I mean, these things that I have been through, these places I have seen, these pre-coming events, I've been able to kind of be there, and I see these things and I look at what's around that could be causing these visions. And in these areas, all these things were around, and I was right there, and I was seeing these things of what they were going to happen. I couldn't see exactly when, but I could tell it wasn't much different than the time that it was now. And I could see the ground moving, and I could feel everything as it was unfolding. And this vision was so real and true that there was no denying it. And then I looked up and I seen where I was, how there was a volcano, that there was actually a fault line through the area, and there was actually a point. And then you consider the surrounding areas and the cities and the things that happened in those cities. So therefore just make it even more of a target point because of everything that's going on. Now everything begins to have this boiling effect. But then there's more. There's all kinds of ingredients that have been added in to the story to help make it what it is, and that's part of it. But yeah, there's been a few points where I have been to the point where I have stood on the corner and stood in parking lots and had a sign reaching out for help at times to try to help get me in a better spot, in a better position, in a better predicament. And for one reason or another, it didn't happen. And that continuously seemed to have been a battle for me ever since I lost my home. But at the same time, the amount of freedom I had going the places we did and seeing the things we seen and experiencing everything that makes this world a beautiful, wonderful place. Just before it goes. You know, there's just so many ways everything piles up. But the thing is that when a woman and a child can go neglected and refused because everything fights against everything that happened, from everything that put her into this position in the first place. Well, how did I get in this position? From death. Well, who died? My child's father died. And when he died, we lost everything. How did we lose everything? Because I wasn't there when he died. Why wasn't I there when he died? Oh my goodness. Now, this is how it really starts right here. So, I wasn't there when he died because me and him just had a fight. He said God wasn't real and I had to choose between him and God. I said, you can't do that. You know what I'm going to do, right? Well, I chose God. He got so mad to the point he literally physically threw me out of the house. So I wasn't there at the time of his death. I was gone. I was away. That right there is something that some people really don't think they'll actually be in that position. And then they're there. Well, that is such a huge magnitude of events that lead up to having to make a decision between God and a man. Why would I not choose God? I mean, come on now, think about it. You understand how big of a thing that is, right? And then yet to know that I love and care about him, but you can't make me choose that and then think I'm going to want to come back to you, and you're not even going to let me read my Bible. You're not going to let me mention it at all. And that, so things just worked in a way that's what the whole reason was I wasn't there when he died, that made it to where his family was able to get his hands all over everything like they did. And during all of this, the one that was hurt the most was my child. Here it is right before Christmas. Her father just passed away. Her so-called family from her father's side coming through like vultures, taking everything. And her not completely wrapping her head around Daddy wouldn't wake up. She was there alone with him when it happened, trapped in the bedroom for all those hours because that's where she was when it happened. They were both in the bedroom. All that time she was alone with him. And now she's lost her home. She's being taken away from her home. She's not being able to go to bed at night in the same bed she's always had, and her daddy just passed away. And here it is right before Christmas. Are you joking me? That's really low. That is so low for someone to do to a child. And her own family, for crying out loud. Yeah, how is that family? Family is not like that. And, it was foretold that during these times that family would rise against family. The sad thing is that I really didn't see this coming out of these people. I mean, I did and I didn't, not to this extent. But anyhow, so the horribleness of the ways of this world has sought after even my living child. Things that no little girl should have ever had to have gone through, she has gone through. She has went from where she had everything because Daddy was looking so far down the road for her, preparing for her in so many ways. And then they have them only caring about getting a hold of stuff and taking the only things that she would have had that would have been for her in the first place, because it was hers. Not counting what they took that was mine, And the messed up thing is that these people, they really know this too. And they know that they did this. And yet they're not bothered enough about it to do anything other. Because this is how they really were. This is the kind of people they were. And that's all that they wanted to be concerned about. And then to top it off, how the system with the cops failed when everything happened. A system that should have been there for somebody, especially like me, who was technically in the right in every way. And I just happen to be one of those people in cases and situations and scenarios that's kind of just swept away. Yep. To where it wasn't important to not listen, to not take notice. And that, is kind of a problem. For it's been foretold in so many ways that be careful, you know not who will be an angel before you. And I know how many people I've came across in my path, on my journey, standing in locations I was, in areas I was, in places I was, and the amount of people throughout my life since childhood till now, everything, and all these different situations, scenarios, and everything compiled up. I have been being prepared for this for a long time in the first place. But the thing is that I am now anxiously awaiting what comes next, and that is my death. Oh, what better thing to talk about during Halloween time than death, right? Especially when it comes with scary, spooky truths that are right before everyone's eyes, and they all want the dark side anyhow. They want the spook and they want the thrill. Well, let's give one of the best Halloween stories possible. Now take everything you just gathered and consider. You want to claim that ghosts and spirits and all this other stuff is real, that God is real, that angels are real, that demons are real. But the only thing that nobody wants to claim is that God would use the same device that you would think something that was other than God, let's say dark and evil and whatnot, and you would give that such quick notice and say that that uses the same thing, but God. Now, why would God do that? Why would God allow his own to go through hardships? If he loved you, wouldn't he have been there for you and taken care of you and lifted you through? Well, I'm sorry, he did. Putting me in the places that were heaven for me in the outdoors, the perfect trees, the perfect rivers and creeks and the mountains, and being it where I was so at home. It was heaven for my child, and she had like a yard, and we were camping in the most beautiful, serene areas, perfectly away from everything. And oh, the joy right before all the destruction. I think, yes, he did take care of me. I think it was everyone else that didn't know what was right in front of their face. A situation that they themselves helped play a factor in one way or another. Because everything is this compiling effect. For everybody was asked and seeked out in one way or another. And this wasn't done by like me alone. This was done with the gloriness and wonderfulness of God in heaven and everything that's on the other side that we don't completely understand, because we're here now in this time. We're not over there where he is. We don't understand all of his ways. But he did come and visit with all of you. There's just a way that God does things. It's like when you're asleep and when you wake up and you can either remember your dream or you can't remember your dream, or your dream fades from you quickly. But if you could remember everything and bring it back, I bet in some way, shape, form, or another, so many people know that this is what it's all been adding up to. That this is what it's been concluding to. The end of the world. And it's unfolding in a way that has this ballooning, feathering effect of puzzle pieces. And it's all always been right there. Somebody just had to want it and seeked it out. But then there was this gypsy, and she seeked it out. For once there was a gypsy who knew her gifts were natural from everything that she could see. For during her studies and explorations to understand about all the things that made her who she was, she never denied the existence of God. She never let him out of her sight. She held close upon the word she thought was truly God's word. And all the other things that would teach her things, but would cause her to go down a path, she chose not to go down that path. And this gypsy continued to look for all the answers for why it was she could see what it was she could see, and became a mystic seeker, seeking the answers for all the things that she sought out after, for explanations and expeditions and explanations and explorations of everything for what they were, and everything just flooded and compiled upon itself to where this mystic seeker found a story that ended up mirroring parts of her life. And in this story, she's able to reflect as she's going through, and it's unfolding all around her. And this story, as she's reading this mystic word from the Holy Bible, is unfolding around her. And all of a sudden, this gypsy is in this quest of a lifetime that her entire life was building her towards and for. And there was so much great potential if only she could cause the world to see. But then this gypsy, oh, the world, they portrayed her the wrong way. They seen her dark and evil because of the ways of which she was twisted, because of all the things that came therefore with and after her, that they weren't able to see it any other way because somebody had already twisted the story about the mystic seeker and the gypsy, the woman that would go through time bringing forth the child. For her herself was a prophet unto her own, in a way that as she continued to flourish through life, and everything would come up against her to try to slow her down as she grasped onto this mystic word from the Holy Bible that was unfolding around her, that was applicable within her life. And she knew that the power that there was inside faith and belief, and with enough people wanting and enough people believing, that all these things would come to pass, and she would find her justice, and things would be righted for all the different rungs on all the different levels, because she was so strong, and she was able to get a hold of this mystic word and to put together all these things she knew about the power and the strength of prayer, the power of the speak, of the tongue, the two-edged sword that comes out, the flowing vibrations of water that become life because of a dream of everything that was twisted. And even though these mountains of everything would come up against to make you question and wonder about reality itself as it unfolds, and then the story just continues to go. And so far, I think we're doing quite well with our story of the mystic woman of the end times. And there's so much more to this on such a large magnitude of scale. But at this time, I think a half hour is a pretty good intro to a story that's a bunch of puzzle pieces that just make you better think twice about the reality of the time of which we live in. So with that in mind, it's now pretty dark. Peace out.